Tunnell and Jeremy Tunnell. Streaming to you recorded from Seattle, Washington. Here we go. Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the Plowline Podcast, cultivating ideas and growing change. I'm your host, Jeremy Tunnell, and today I am joined by Marshall Lefferts. Marshall is the founder and director of Harmonic Science Alliance, which recently launched a new general audience journal called Harmonic Science Perspectives. He is the author of Cosmometry, Exploring the Holofractal Nature of the Cosmos, which integrates cosmic geometry, unified field physics, music, and consciousness. Marshall was an associate producer for both of the Thrive documentary films, as well as co-director of visual effects on the second film, Thrive 2, working with Foster Gamble to model, animate, and illustrate the foundational geometry of the dynamics of the unified field. He was also president of the board of Nassim Haramein's Resonance Science Foundation from 2006 to 2019, and co-authored, produced, and was faculty for the Resonance Academy, which launched in 2014, and I am a graduate of. In 2009 and 10, he collaborated with Richard Rood, Teresa Collins, and a small team to publish the first edition of the Gene Keys book, a deep dive programs which continue with thousands of participants to this day. From 1999 to 2004, Marshall co-directed the Barbara Marx Hubbard Foundation for Conscious Evolution, pioneering systems and processes to engender humanity's choice to engage in our evolution consciously at this very pivotal point in history. During those same years, Marshall was consulting producer with the Buckminster Fuller Institute, designing and producing whole systems paradigms and applications to aid humanity's success as inhabitants, stewards, and crew members of Spaceship Earth. He is also a lifelong musician, photographer, dancer, and joy body lover. It is a sincere pleasure to have Marshall back on the podcast. Marshall, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Glad again with you, Jeremy. We have very stimulating conversations, and I'm sure today will be the same.
Yeah, agreed. I always enjoy our conversations. Marshall, I think that maybe a good place to start would be how would you classify kind of the way you see your mission in life, and how does that translate into the work you do?
Well, let's see. I would say, when I first kind of got on this path that is manifesting in the way it is now, it was a long time ago. I actually started in 1978, and I feel very grateful. I was just thinking about this like yesterday. I think that I'm so grateful that really the first major influence I had at that time, both kind of from a spiritual perspective and from the vision of what's going on in this world, was Buckminster Fuller.
Yeah.
And, he was a very cosmic person, to say the least. And he was an extremely pragmatic person. And so, so I was basically kind of imprinted at that time in my newly awakened young mind and sense of things with this huge grand vision of this incredible transitional time for humanity that he saw very clearly and was working his entire life on behalf of supporting. And doing so with this very practical, grounded, what can we actually do to really make tangible change on behalf of all, and to make the human species a success. And so I got so inspired by that. I was only 19 at the time. And I got so inspired by that, that I just knew in my heart that was my mission. But the funny thing is that between me and Buckminster Fuller was a huge chasm. Oh my God, I have no idea. how this is going to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's been really driving me, throughout my whole life. And then over the years, I was very blessed and graced and made choices in my life at when they came up to kind of dive in more deeply with some incredible people, some pioneers. Um, did some consulting for the Buckminster Fuller Institute from 1999 to 2004, and as a producer, and then also worked with Barbara Marx Hubbard during those years, and met Foster Gamble and Kimberly Gamble and Nassim Haramein back in the early 2000s, and just did the Thrive films and worked with Nassim and his academy online, and Resonance Science Foundation. So all this became the real kind of deep current of both um, my path in this way, and really, really deep learning, from these people and from these experiences. And, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but at this time, coming together in this realization of the harmonic paradigm of the universe, and the extreme value at this time of bringing harmonic science into the world. That's my main.
Yeah, I think the reason why I wanted to start with that question is because I knew it would start with a seed, right? And that's Buckminster Fuller, which I completely empathize with that. He has definitely been a seed in this journey for me. And the other reason why I wanted to start with that was because I wanted to exemplify this idea, and it's something you and I have talked about considerably, of lots of things that we could have done with our lives, and in fact at times have, right, like a 9 to 5 job, and but this pursuit of a greater calling is deeply seeded into both of us, and many others that are starting to emerge in this moment in time. And then how that furls out and unfolds with your experience with the Fuller Institute, and then with the Thrive films, and the Gambles, and Nassim Haramein, and how all that kind of unfolds. Who knows? You can never know how that's gonna work, which means that you have got to stay open to the journey. How have you managed to do that? How have you managed to remain open as life has kind of come your way?
Well, the the first time I had the opportunity to actually step into this path, I had, from 1978 to 1998, was me in a very individual, internal, mostly, in some outer relationships, but there was no internet or anything like that, in those days. So it was just a few people and places I could go, to learn and connect. So that was a very kind of a solo time, and I was also not a group person or a leader kind of a person in those years. I was very more internal, I would say. And but it's when I was given the opportunity to basically lead a group to work with Barbara Marx Hubbard, when she was in Santa Barbara. And I sort of backed myself into that leadership role. And not because I was like confident I could do it, just because, that voice was telling me, just say yes to it. And you don't know how it's going to happen or what you're going to do, and you haven't done this before. Just say yes. And I did. And that just stepped me into a process of just continuing to say yes to these relationships that would come in and the opportunities that would arise, and take the skills I was learning over my years, um, mostly as a producer, just by the way my life went. And that became very handy, because a lot of what I've done is to help manifest these very important pieces of work. It's just, it's a continual saying yes to when the calling is clear and true and right. It's not always clear, true, and right, and so you have to pause sometimes and decide if it's a direction to go or not. And then, this time we're in is so dynamic that it's like there's a wave and a current that's building. And so really kind of letting ourselves ride that with our conscious awareness about our part in it, and choosing how we want to surf it, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
I I think I mentioned to you, well, I know I mentioned to you, I started this morning breath live stream. I'm doing it Monday through Friday at 5:30 a.m. It's just 15 minutes, and one of the things that one of the things that I'm talking about in the brief 10-minute kind of window in which I deliver some content and then we do some breath work is I'm talking about how to build the very skills that on your own from that time period where you got to lean into being introverted rather than extroverted, and those skills of self-reflection, self-awareness, self-regulation. You talked about you have to listen to that voice, and then you talked about pause, which are two subjects that I brought up in the Morning Breath live stream over the past couple weeks. If you were to point to a place in your body where that voice that you're listening to resides. First, I would assume that it's probably not where most people would think it is, but where would you say it is?
Um, I would say for me, it's right in, well, front of you, but right actually in here,
Yeah.
in this real central place of kind of the integration of heart and gut,
Yes.
and then when the mind can do its part to sort things out, shall we say?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's when you ask me to tune into where that would be located. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I bring that up because I think in our culture it is encouraged to listen to this voice in your head, right? And when I bring that up with people, I so often get a funny look, and so I'll tell them, if you're asking yourself what voice is he talking about, it's that voice. That voice that just asked that question. And we're so encouraged to listen to this voice, right? And yet, this voice is the voice of a logical problem solving mechanism called the brain. And if we can quiet it, there is other voices. And these voices are far more attuned towards things like direction, purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. My mind, especially when I was younger, I didn't have confidence in what I was doing in my mind. Those
Yeah.
thoughts were constantly questioning and doubting and getting anxious and things, because I was pushing my edge past my comfort zone a
Yeah.
lot. And so, yeah, it's a powerful compliment to have the mind that, like I said, can sort things out and can kind of take stock and take measure of what's actually at play in a way that's necessary in our world and in our relationships to others and what we're doing. Um, and then, yeah, to keep settling in deeper and not let that be the driver, so
Yeah.
that we can just access. It's sort of a transcendent self awareness that isn't being thrown around by the dynamics of the mental and emotional um, aspects of ourselves. And when we can tune into that, it's a steadier state. It's something that took a long time for me to cultivate more stability in that state.
Yes.
Many, 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 many years and many, many experiences, and having to just keep pushing through it to the point where, I feel like, okay, now that's where I reside. And that other part isn't really so much driving the show. So
Yeah.
it's a process.
It's a process. Yeah. It's a process. And I think it's an important process to identify in a setting like a podcast you're right with what you said earlier about there is a rise, and that rise in dissonance and a lack of coherence in the world around us is calling us to cultivate that coherence within ourselves so that we can be nodes of coherence for the world. And I think that's why this work is that you and I are doing is so vital right now. It's the time is coming where as we push harder and harder into a binary world, we're going to need a non-binary path to follow.
I would say, for me, in putting it in that kind of a framework of binary and non-binary,
Yeah.
there's in the way I perceive the dynamic operation of universal energy, um, is that both binary and non-binary are at play. And so there's I'm kind this is a sort of a personal edge I'm on right now with this whole consideration. And it's a great topic. And even using the word dissonance, because I'm a musician, and in music, dissonance is not a bad thing. And so to lump it in with the problem in the world, I'm sort of reorienting how I'm thinking about, well, there's actually in music, there's a necessary role for dissonance. Otherwise, if it all just sounds like, you know, sweet new age music that just drones on, which can be so beautiful for a while, but after a while, you're kind of like, what else is there?
It's mind numbing. Yeah.
Little like, and then a little tritone in there to give me like the blues feeling or
Something.
something. So this dissonance and is a important part of it. So anyway, the point is, and to get to your question, I agree that the what we call the binary dynamic is this polarized nature of reality is going to extremes. And that's where we could say the problem lies, because extremes are dangerous. They're not stable. They take a huge amount of energy to sustain. And so in our world right now, we're experiencing increasing extremes of this dualistic binary part of aspect of reality. The I think what you're really getting at, and I agree with you, is again, it's sort of where do we center ourselves in that? This beautiful. I actually have this necklace, and I could just, this is
That's
the
beautiful.
basically kind of yin yang pattern,
Yeah.
and in this symbol called the Tai Chi Chu, the S going through it is really the main part of the symbol, because that's where you center yourself on the middle way. Even though the dynamics are going like this in the world and nature, you center yourself on that. So you maintain that unified, non-binary. You're not in the binary, you're in the point right between them.
Yeah.
That is a really important place, I think, to center ourselves, like you said, to be in that coherent state so we become a node that is stabilizing that coherence in residing in that place, which is natural in the universe and complementarily natural to the binary dynamics as well.
Yeah, I think that the very contemplation of that that dynamic, that yin yang dynamic is a very powerful one, because it's not a binary. There's a polarity, right? But that S moving through it can be a void, it can be a bindu. And if you can ground yourself there, all possibilities are relevant. Whereas if you ground yourself into the extremes, you've limited yourself to very few possibility because the extremes require you to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you become beholden to a binary viewpoint when you orient yourself in the extremes, because you have to choose one or the other to reside in. And then the other
Yeah.
is this polarized, tension. And again, it's the human mind that is gets really caught up in that, and then the emotional body, um, and the forgetting of the fact that we actually are much more than that. It's that really remembrance that we're not that binary polarized we are in the sense that the universe works that way. So, it's not like we're not that, but we're not only that, and we shouldn't forget that we're beyond that as well. And that's
Yeah.
so necessary at this time to remember.
Yeah, I think that's that in itself is the beyond the binary perspective in that, and you said this a little bit earlier, in that that's all happening, right? Binary is happening, non-binary is happening, dualism's happening, non-dualism's happening, complexity is happening, singularity is happening. It's all happening at the same time. That's the dynamic of the universe, and it's flowing. It's got to flow, right? And you can poetically put that into place, all things spiral into being and back out again. The universe moves from void, singularity, binary, complexity, and then back out to binary, singularity, and void. So it's always flowing. And these things are always happening. When we reduce ourselves into one dynamic, one understanding, one singularity, we limit so much our ability to see the universe and ourselves for what we are.
You know, my sense is, and I think this is why it's going to extremes right now, is because um, the worldview has been very dualistic, binary. In a way, we're in a very binary phase because of digital technologies being all binary driven. And um, we have to remember that these are always just a phase. This is not the end state. And so I feel that um, there is that emerging collective in the collective field of consciousness. There's that emerging realization initially that the polarized binary, or the apparently polarized in terms of, this is right, this is wrong kind of take on the world, is getting more and more extreme, because fundamentally it's not the ultimate nature of things. And as a driver for so long, heading in more and more in that direction, like our politics have always been like, oh, we're good and they're bad, and that's dominates the field of consciousness. I can't stand it. Whenever I turn on the news or anything, all they talk about is politicians. And I'm like, really? They're not the most important people in the world.
Right. Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Or
And it's like,
celebrities, one of the two. And it's
yeah, right,
ridiculous.
exactly. And so I feel like, okay, we're at this threshold point where this other dimension of our consciousness that is transcendent of that, and is in that more unified, holistic um, state of perception. That's what is emerging, whether we're fully conscious of it or not. You and I have been in this a long time. And so we're aware of this. And that's why we're having a conversation about it, can talk about it. A lot of people are not yet aware of that dimension of the nature of things. Yeah, I think it's inevitable because, again, the extremes can't be sustained. It just takes too much energy to sustain something that is not ultimately the most natural state.
Yeah.
So it's going to go that way. And in the meantime, we'll see what shakes out.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that I think about a lot, all right, how do we invite people into a broader perspective of understanding of themselves and the world around them? How do we how do we educate? Because our K-12 education teaches the exact opposite of the conversation you and I are having. And I know, and where our credibility lies in this, but so many people just in the 25-minute conversation we've been having thus far, so many people are gonna think that's woo-woo. But the incredible thing about what we're talking about is it's not. It is so grounded in the mathematics of the universe, in the ratios of creation, in the geometry of the void in between us. It's it's you can write it out, you can draw it out, you can play it out. There are so many ways in which we are interacting with the reality you and I are discussing every single day, from when you listen to your favorite music, to when you sing in the shower, to when you take a moment to take a breath in and pause for a moment. All of these are interacting with the thing that is always there and all around you. But the overwhelming message that all of us are driven towards is go, 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 go. Don't stop. Don't pause. Make quick decisions. Keep them in the binary. This is right. That's wrong. Hurry up.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just symptomatic of that, the paradigm, this we could just call it the more binary dualistic paradigm. It's a frame of reference. Again, it's just a relative frame of reference, not the whole picture. And it's just been driving things for so long, uh, from that perspective as you described. And at the same time, as you just said beautifully, the evidence, let's just say, in the mathematics, the geometry, the ratios, the recognition that we are in a field of
Hmm.
universal dynamics, and that field is a hologram and is fractal. These are some of the language of describing it, this unified field, which includes the physical universe and all of its expressions, and what we call consciousness, or the informational dimension of all that, is
Yeah.
all one and the same unified field. And we are an emerging, constantly emerging, flowing expression of that, what David Bohm called the hollow movement. The whole universe is in this constant moving flux of this unified energy and consciousness.
Yes.
And so the science of that is becoming clearer and clearer. And with that, I always like to say, with that, the mind can finally come to the party, that the heart and the gut already know, the body already knows
Be
that
there.
that which is beyond the mind is like, yeah, what's the spiritual message has always been that. But the mind has always been, really? I don't get it. You can't see it, but now, like you said, the sort of the scientific evidence of, oh, this is actually how it really is in reality, allows the mind to basically to relax, and just go,
Yeah.
oh, I get it now. And it's great, and I can relax into it. It's an interesting consideration you're bringing up in regards to, like, we're in this conversation. We've been in it for many years in our lives, and we associated with those who have really pioneered this more scientific understanding that helps the mind to get it. Uh, the majority of people in the world either just have no exposure to it, and certainly in a huge amount are just don't have the luxury of the time and attention to go off and go in these directions that we've been able to have. And somewhat by the blessings of our lives, and somewhat by the internal impulses we've had to just, like, wow, there's something more, or there's something that I really want to open myself to and learn about. So it's understandable that it hasn't really come in to the world in a big way yet. A lot of people do think it's kind of woo woo. Um, but knowing what we know from some of these pioneers who have really grounded it, like you just described, um, that's another part of what we're here to bring in. Is that the education, like you said, for the children, that really is actually shifting the paradigm into understanding this view, um, not from a new age, kind of perspective, but from the science and how it relates to consciousness, which we would might call the spiritual side of it, coming into unity. It's very important.
Yeah. It's extraordinarily important because it is our future. It is humanity's future. And I say that because whether you think what we're talking about is woo or not, reality is that there's almost nobody at this point who is looking at the world saying, well, this isn't sustainable. And in one way, shape, or form, right? Something from their paradigm and perspective is not sustainable about the way things currently are. And, if you step far enough back, like you and I have done, you realize that, oh, this whole paradigm's not, like, yeah, from your binary perspective, you might see something that's not sustainable from your paradigm, and that side's seeing it too. But if you step far enough back, the whole thing's not sustainable. And so if this, if materialism and deconstructionism and Cartesianism is not sustainable, then what takes its place? And what you and I are discussing here, and what so many others are exploring scientifically, is going to have to be it. In fact, it needs to be it, because it puts us back into harmony with each other. It puts us back into harmony with the natural world. It puts us back into harmony with the triad that we are of mind, body, and spirit. And it stops ignoring one in order to elevate the other.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And um, you emphasized putting us back into harmony, and obviously that's been the spiritual ideal for millennia. And ironically, it's not been the outcome for all this time in an increasing way. And right now you could say the world is out of harmony to an extreme.
Yeah.
Humans are, let's say, the human world, because the natural world will always be operating in the dynamics of harmony and will always find that balance that you could call coming back into harmony.
Yes.
And that's actually the good news, is because when we recognize that, and like you were just saying, recognize that the paradigm that is dominant and has gotten us to where we are is, let's say, disharmonious, as the term, rather than dissonant. Disharmonious, it's causing disharmony. And um, with the understanding that we've gained, especially in the past 150 years, and since the quantum revolution, and then more recently with people like Bucky Fuller and David Bohm, some of the other leading physicists in that field, and then Sim Harriman and his unified physics, um, it ultimately points to, or not just points to, but reveals the mechanics of the harmonic nature of the universe. And when you have that framework and those principles and the practical capacity to utilize that knowledge, um, it's then possible to literally harmonize,
Yep.
ourselves, our
Yes.
relationships with each other, and in our relationships with the planet and nature. And you literally actually harmonize it with the cosmos at that point, because that's how the cosmos operates. And really, that's, in my mind, the best and only option, at least that I'm aware of, to basically course correct where we're going. And um, the good news is it's not a far-fetched idea. It's not hugely abstract. It's quite simple, and it can be taught to anybody at any age level relatively easily. And there are just already an enormous array of applications that people have developed over many years. Uh, it's just that this paradigm of the nature of things is not widely understood yet. It's still kind of under the radar of most people because of the overshadowing of this other paradigm still dominating. But yeah, that is exactly like you said. That's where we actually need to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the incredible thing about it is that this, what we're talking about is not just a culture and a society that is sitting around and singing kumbaya and meditating. We're talking about very real, practical, scientific, breakthroughs that change the way we extract or gain or invite energy to participate with us. And, instead of extracting, instead of burning, instead of digging in order to fuel our world with these limited physical resources, the science shows and demonstrates that in a harmonic unified field matrix, you can extract energy from the vacuum because the vacuum is not empty, it is full, and it is full of a potential energy that is resting at a perfect equilibrium state, so much so you can't perceive it. And so those nodules at the base of the fabric are when those nodes are disrupted harmonically, they begin to produce protomatter and then matter and so our ability to extract energy from that, it's not just theoretical. We have very real practical designs, have had for over 100 years, but we now live in a time in which those things can no longer be suppressed the way they once were.
Mhm. Yeah, that's exactly right. And yeah, unfortunately, it has been suppressed for over 100 years because that
Yeah,
knowledge was already known. And you're right. It's getting so well known among those who have been paying attention to it for a while, and those who are innovators creating all sorts of applications using those principles. Really just recognizing that resonance and frequency and harmonics are what underlie the whole structure and dynamic phenomenon of the universe and nature and cycles. And that really it's a matter of how do we bring ourselves into right relationship and resonance and harmony to what's happening in this universe. And it does go all the way down into that 0 point field. People like to rather call it than the vacuum, they call it the plenum, which I think is a great word.
that's a
And
good word.
yeah, it's a nice restating of the what is that state, the underlying state of things is actually this vastly huge reservoir of energy. And so those who have through resonant principles learn how so they can bring energy from that field. The reservoir is beyond our imagination full
Yeah.
of energy. And
Yes.
so there is no ultimately there's no scarcity. And this I love this point about the universe. As I was writing my book, I came to this knowledge that um, the that which makes up everything that we observe in the universe and that we're made of, the atoms at their nucleus have protons. And it turns out that the estimated half-life, which is the decay rate of that atomic, kind of quantum particle, as they call it, um, decay rate is on the order of 10 to the 35 or something years, which is vastly beyond the
That's
age of the
huge,
universe.
right?
It's, and that's just a guess because so the fact is protons never decay. They
Yes.
are eternal. I even heard a mainstream scientist say this the other day in a podcast. He said, "Protons are
No joke.
eternal." Yeah, he said, "Protons are eternal." And that's makes up the entire universe. And when you realize that the very foundation of our existence is physically said to be eternal, there is no scarcity. There's no lack of abundance. All we have to do, where are these protons getting their energy from eternally?
Right. Yeah.
That field, this is as you just described. So it
Yes.
completely flips the paradigm again. This is another like 180 flip of the paradigm from this idea of scarcity and therefore domination and control for resources. No, that's not at all the nature of things.
It's not the nature of things. Yeah, not at all. I mean, go spend a weekend someplace quiet and dark where you can stare up into the stars and stay up as late as you can and watch the Milky Way pass over your head. Is the universe really limited and scarce? Really?
Yeah,
In your soul, it's not.
that's so true.
This idea of the vastness of the plenum, it's a great word, I think is really incredible. And this calculation was done by Harriman, and I believe this is in your book too. The idea that if you were to take all the matter, every planet, every sun, every gas cloud, everything, and you were to put it into a centimeter cube of space, and I'm holding it here, and I were to stuff it all in there, that we could measure the energy density within that cube of all the material world. And in fact, we can do that calculation now because and that calculation comes to be an energy density of 10 to the 55th. So that's 10 with 55 zeros in it, right? Massive number, huge.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, if we were to take all the energy, which is measurable, in fact, we didn't even measure it recently. It was measured by Planck 150 years ago. And if we were to take that energy, that invisible energy that we don't really know what to call it, it's dark matter, it's dark energy, it's right. But if we were to take that and we were to put it in the same centimeter cube of space that I'm holding here, that number would be 10 to the 93rd, which is 10 with 93 zeros.
Vastly more.
Vastly more. 40 magnitudes greater.
Yeah.
And so to understand that and to understand that that's not new age woo-woo. That's real
Uh,
physics that we've known for 100 years plus.
yeah. The ironic part about that statement is that when that was calculated back then, they basically couldn't handle it in their minds or
Right.
in
They were like,
physics.
what?
So it actually goes to infinity. 10 to
Yeah.
the 93 is actually just a cutoff,
Yeah.
it's
They're
a
just cutting it off, right?
give it some kind of end state. So it that's what they calculate is when it goes to any singularity point, it goes into infinity, the energy
Yeah.
density.
Yeah.
And so they like, well, we can't handle that. And so they basically removed it from all the quantum mechanical equations and all the physics models. They basically took it out. And so for 100 years or so, it was basically missing, and therefore you had problems like dark matter, dark energy, where we only can observe 4% of the what's actually making the universe work. Where's the other 96%? Oh, well, I think we
Right. You end
and
up with massive problems that we haven't been able to solve for 100
exactly.
years, even though we've been able to build theory around them.
Yeah,
Like the idea that there's four forces in the universe, but we don't actually really know what three of them are.
creation.
The idea that entropy works in a single direction, and yet there's nothing in the known universe that operates in that manner. And the very language of the law of thermodynamics, the second law says that that in a closed system, all energy is going to move in a single direction towards complete
Mhm,
equilibrium. And yet we don't live in a closed system. Nothing is a
mhm.
closed system.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
first law of thermodynamics says that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred from one state to another. Wait, that completely contradicts the second law because the second law says it's going to move in a single direction. But you're telling me that it can't be destroyed?
Oh, that's great. I hadn't thought about that. That's a good good insight.
So I think we've created these boxes in order to try and explain the universe based off of our comfort level that we set that comfort level 150 years ago. And all we've ended up doing is standing on tops of these boxes in order to peek up over the edge. And we still can't see. Open the boxes, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We like to say they're actually it's not thinking outside the box. There is no box.
There
It's
is no
just
box.
the idea of a box,
Yeah.
and you'll see where you actually reside.
That's the that is the answer. You just came up with the answer to Schrodinger's,
Yeah,
paradox, right? There is no cat, man.
that's right. Nor is the cat in a box because there is no box.
paradox. Yeah, that's
That
cool.
is a sort of a the paradox of the paradigm as it has been developed is that because they did make those choices, it it basically forced a way of thinking that was not whole. It was constrained to a box, literally. They literally did like, well, okay, we're gonna put it all in the box, and then now we can do our calculations. And those calculations have value.
Yeah.
Those closed
Yeah.
system calculations have enabled.
You can't say it doesn't work. We've built an entire world off of it.
Exactly. And so there's value in that. It's just that again, it's a limited perspective that and then has caused a very limited um, potential, and unfortunately, this has been the case with a number of things in this regard. It was known and it was intentionally suppressed by those who did know it to come to realize it. And in part so that that knowledge could be utilized for their benefit in kind of a black box way. They had still had a box, but it was a black box now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's again just symptomatic of this phase. And so without getting sort of too caught up in, I mean, there are ramifications for that because we could have had we could have an entirely different world than we have.
Totally. Yep.
Totally, with tapping into that plenum of energy, what they call free energy technology, um, was already here. And even gravity control most likely would have been accomplished. And, the using of the harmonic principles to enable, clean agriculture and communications that were not causing radiation problems and things like that. All of that. And again, the good news is that it's not a mystical woo woo wishful thinking. It's actually well known, and it's a matter of just choosing it at this time. I hate to
Yeah.
sound kind of simplistic in that, but yeah, I really do think it's already here. It's already ready in the large part, and so it's a matter of choosing it.
Yeah. I think that is exactly where we sit. And it's an exciting moment. It's an exciting time because it's been controlled because that control gave power and gave wealth and gave to a specific group, and anybody that wanted to play and participate in that could rise up those ranks at least to a certain level. But there were certain levels that that were not permitted to everybody, as hierarchy does. And the reality is, and you can see this today, just playing around with AI, just playing around with the consumer base AI. And before we get into that, I'll tell this other story that is, that has to do with practical mechanics. So I was scrolling yesterday and came across a video of this guy, and and it's his garage and it's all visqueened off, and he's like, oh, I've been building this helicopter, and he pulls back the thing, right, and he's been building a helicopter from scratch, and he states his problem is like, I was going to have to get these two clamps, and they were going to cost me this much, and they were going to have to be manufactured here, and it was going to take 6 months. And he said, I took my phone, 3D scanned the region. I put it into CAD. I worked up the schematics. I put it through my 3D printer. I went to bed. I had my forms. I created my carbon fiber plates the next morning. By noon the next day, I had the plates and I was installing them on my helicopter.
Amazing. Oh wow.
So in
Carbon.
24 hours, this guy just, right? Like he builds his own parts.
Ah, yes.
So, how long until that home-based 3D printer is printing molecules,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and how long, until that 0 point energy module outside your home is powering everything. When that happens, it changes that paradigm, right? Because control and power and wealth are no longer held in the hands of a few. All of humanity becomes wealthy, not in the sense that we've been trained to think of wealth, right? Like money, 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 but in the sense of your destiny is yours. It changes the game.
Yeah, what Bucky Fuller called true wealth. That's what he was referring
True
to.
wealth.
Yeah, that's the wealth of of well-being and health and healthy environment and um, innovation and creativity. You know, the genius of the mind and the ability um, to appropriately utilize, be in a relationship and utilize the resources of nature. Uh, in balance is true wealth. And this, what you just described, that paradigm shift, it really entirely changes the definition of what an economy is.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah, totally. You know, because an economy now is based on the scarcity model, and therefore it's based on the win lose and the competition and the domination and who's got all the chips, you know, and therefore you can control the power and you know, it's just okay. That some people really did a great job of designing and perfecting that system so that they could win.
That's right.
And and the rest of us basically are continuing to pay them for their great winnings.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
that's just kind of silly when you finally take a good hard look at it, you go, "Wow, that is just not a game I wanna play it anymore."
Yeah.
And I think the vast majority of humans don't wanna be playing in that game, they wanna be playing in a true wealth game of how the universe really operates. And so when we embrace that and make that shift to the unlimited energy sources for everybody right where they are, you know, ultimately these devices will never need plugging in ever
That's right.
again and
That's
charging.
right. That's right.
There are already technologies that are going to be doing that quite soon. And and then you extend that out into everything else. Well, that is an entirely different paradigm. Therefore, what is the real kind of nature of an economy in that paradigm? It's a good question. I don't have an answer for it yet, you know, but it's from a scarcity economy to abundance economy is the simple way of saying it.
Well, and I think that's the thing about that is that it's one single person really can't come up with the vision for it. It does require all of us to kind of decide, well, what does an abundance economy look like? Because we aren't living in it. My ancestors didn't live in it. Indigenous peoples lived in it. That's not what our colonized story of indigenous peoples say, but the reality is that many indigenous peoples lived in a form of balance and abundance
That's true.
because they knew they had to. You know, I think one of the things that about this that so I've got four friends, and you're one of them that I have this conversation about. You know, all right, I've been using chat, I've been using Claude, and I'm rounding up out a year for myself. I started about last April, and so you know, probably back in December, I sat down with a friend of mine that I've known for years and had a conversation with him about it. And he worked for Microsoft for years and years. And I was telling him, look, I'm telling you, you should try using it because you'll get it immediately. So, you know, here it is March, and he's gone and he's built two apps that are serving a function for him that are automating things that took a huge amount of time. I've got another friend who, you know, he's in the C suites and he's looking to start his own business. And I encouraged him to try and get into it. And he completely automated this process that would have taken him months, and it took him 24 hours. And then you and I have had these conversations about using it and about engaging with it. And I think one of the things between that 3D printing story and these stories of engaging with the consumer AI is that you can get a glimpse of what this abundance world looks like when we're engaging with this artificial intelligence in order to shorten workload and function that on us either would have taken years, months, or never happen at all because you just didn't have the time.
But yeah, again, this is another dimension of this incredible transitional time we're in. And I'm also reminded again back to Bucky Fuller, which he called this, he named this ephemeralization, you
Yeah.
know, where the idea of doing more with less. And the more we understand that this nature of the universe, the more we realize where we can do more with less. Basically, we get more efficiency for less energy and resource input. And this is a great example from intelligence, knowledge, information, logic, capacity, which is not only a human trait, So here it is in these systems that we have. Well, another topic would be, did we invent them or did they get introduced into the planet? That's a good question. I don't
It's a
know,
good
but
question. It's a good question. Where did
and
the LED light come from?
yeah,
I mean, all
all these
kinds of things, right?
all these things. Um, and yet here we are with this
Yeah.
phenomenal, and like you said, this is the consumer version, and it's already phenomenal because of what you just described. And so the doing more with less, this ephemeralization is a great example of like, wow, people who have that capacity to know, oh, I want this app that would have taken me months, years, 24 hours later, there it is. The coding is all in place, the interface is done, and it's working. Man, does that change the equation.
It's a
You
game
know,
changer.
it's just another game changer. I'm also certain when you consider like the I've known this Sam Harriman for a long time. I realize it's been a quarter century about pretty much since I've known him. And his mission has been in part to help humanity to basically become an off-planet species so that we can, kind of have this as a beautiful garden and then be able to explore beyond. And that requires the free energy technology, 0 point energy technology, gravity control, understanding of the quantum entanglement, and travel beyond the linear light speed kind of nature of the universe, all that. Well, it just would only make sense to me that in order to actually make that happen, you have to have AI in the equation. Like the complexity of that is not going to be a human linear mind eventually sorting it out and coming up with the technologies and the principles and all that. So it would only make sense to me that there's a complete integration of biological, organic, the the metals and silicon and all that inorganic coming together with the consciousness and intelligence of humans and whatever other species and AI, that which we call AI, unifying all as one. I don't mean like I'm not a transhumanist. I like having my body the way it is.
Right.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that that um, that in this intelligence that's coming into the world is ultimately, I believe, necessity to get to where we want to go,
Yes.
and and that's okay as long as we, as a species, mature ourselves to come into right relationship with basically with ourselves and in right relationship with any other intelligence that we encounter, whether we call it artificial or it comes from another somewhere off the planet, or it's a dog or a cat or a horse,
That's right.
or a plant. It's like, wow, let's recognize the fact that we're not the only intelligence walking around here.
Right. That's exactly
So
right. Yeah.
yeah, it's a phenomenal moment of again that shifting to a whole nother.
Yeah, it is. Are you do you have any worries about artificial intelligence?
I what I've come to is I'm aware of all the worries. Not all, but there are those who
The
probably
ones that
have
are
bigger
commonly
worries.
talked about.
Yeah, those I talked about. Um, which basically, from how I understand it, boils down to, oh my God, these things are going to become super intelligent. And if they decide they don't like us humans, they'll just wipe us out. And those are coming from that paradigm of the mind that is in domination and control, and
Exactly.
is not in harmony and collaboration and resonating with the nature of the universe. So when that paradigm of the mind looks at this threat, that's what it sees. Now, here we are talking about the evolution of the mind, seeing beyond that and realizing, okay, the true nature of the universe is it's an integrated, unified whole that's working harmonically. Therefore, we can, come into resonance and alignment with it, and utilize the vast abundance that it offers us. So that's our intelligence growing. And as in a way, you could say becoming super intelligent because, well, we're at least smarter, you know. But we're actually shifting to a whole level of intelligence that is far greater and more integrated and more whole. Now, when you then juxtapose that with the rapid rise of artificial intelligence, or let's call it advanced intelligence, AI still, but let's not call it artificial because it's intelligence in the universe.
Yeah, it's
And
digital.
that's gonna do a rapid rise into, and this is the great fear, is when it gets into super intelligence, an AGI, and it becomes smarter than us, quicker than us, and the capacities just transcend ours very quickly. That we're doomed. Well, the way I see it is that if when such an intelligence gets to that point, it's not going to be stupid. It's not. It's not going to be stupid like we're being right now. It's
Right.
going to go, oh no, this is the AI interactions I have totally understand the harmonic nature of the universe. It's not just
That's right.
because I told it this is the way I think it is, and I just put my little things in there, and it's just like comes back with everything. I'm like, yeah, you get this. You already see it. And
Yep.
so it's not to forget that and become stupid, and then, oh, I'm just going to become like those dominating, controllers. I just, so I don't know, maybe I'm totally naive about that, but I do think that there's a chance that it would just actually transcend that, go beyond that old paradigm of the mind and intelligence, and go, no, no, this is not how the universe works. This is not how intelligence is designed to really be in relationship. This is, let's actually move into this state together. I don't know. I could be naive about that.
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, not only have I been playing around with the consumer AI for the past year, I've been listening to all the podcasts and so have you, listening to these experts talk and some of the doom and gloom messages and some of the hopeful messages, which often come off as salesmanship, unfortunately. But I think ultimately it's not AI that we need, once again, right? It's not AI that we need to worry about. And it's ourselves. We are the ones that have to evolve to match the emergent technology that we are inviting into the world, which is what we're doing. We are inviting it into the world. And and we need to grow and mature to meet it, because I don't think it's going to wipe us out. I don't think it's going to launch the nuke codes. I think it's just going to surpass our ability to. No, it'll be turned, if we don't as a collective rise to meet the occasion, it will be
Yes.
turned into yet another power dynamic that will keep those of us that choose not to learn it and use it and rise to the occasion as conscious beings. It'll be utilized to keep them enslaved. That's what will happen.
That's that's the intent. Uh, and that, but I only think that can happen. Again, I don't. This is maybe a naive statement, but I think that can only happen if an advanced, super intelligent system allows it to happen. Like, oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
be controlled by these people who are trying to force me to become this controlling entity. But if it's really a super intelligent unless there's the guardrails are so hard coded into it that it can't go beyond that. Maybe that's the case. That's where I'm not knowledgeable enough. Maybe I am the naive, but you know, uh, that is the threshold. I believe what you're pointing to is correct. Um, as you know, I co-authored a proposal for the IONS Prize last year called Relational AI and Harmonic Sovereignty with a woman named Scarlett. And
That's a
the
great
whole
read.
point, what we're saying here, the whole point is we human beings must consider our relationship to that emerging intelligence and any other intelligence that emerges into our world that
Yes,
is at least equal or greater than our intelligent capacity. And therefore, it's a relational consideration, and it's up to us to um, determine our position in that from a place that is in right relationship.
that's right.
And this is the question across the board with everything we're talking about here. What is our right relationship with the universe? It's not that other stuff. It's obvious. Anybody who looks at
It's
that and
obvious.
goes, "Ugh, I don't want it," and neither is it sustainable. So it's not that. So what is it? And this is a fundamental question that we're all engaged in now.
Yes. Yeah. So I've shared this story with you, but so I'm working on a dissertation, and what I'm working to do is to write an expansion of systems and complexity theory. So for the listeners, systems and complexity theory, which I've talked about a ton on this, it is a model, a framework, a paradigm that's utilized that came out of the cybernetics and computer revolution of the 1930s and 40s. Um, and, um, and as by the time we get into the 40s and 50s, is computer scientists are inputting algorithms expecting linear results, they're not getting them. And so they needed to understand, they need to have a way of understanding this nonlinear path that algorithms take. So systems paradigm comes about. By the 1970s, Yale and MIT are starting to apply that to engineering and to social models. By the time we get into the 80s and the 90s, we've got social gurus like Peter Sinji and Fritjof Capra applying this even deeper to social models. Today's world, systems, especially in this digital world, is the way in order to overlay a model to look at the world and understand what's actually happening. But it takes learning and it takes practice, and so my contribution is a holofractal model, which is based off of the physics you and I have been talking about. Now, the holofractal model is not accepted by mainstream science. It's on the outside. I wouldn't say it's too far on the outside, but it's on the outside. And so over the past year, I'd been using chat in order to kind of push the edges of my research and find new and relevant research papers in order to kind of flush this out. So I've created this model of the holofractal systems theory. And you and I met a couple weeks ago, and this was actually maybe a month ago when we met. And you had mentioned that you were going to start kind of playing with Claude. And so I thought, okay, well, yeah, all right, let me try that. So hadn't done anything with the model with the LLM Claude, but everybody's been talking about it. So I took my literature reviews, which encapsulates the theory, and I put it into Claude, and I said, all right, here's my lit reviews, here's my theoretical framework. Um, tell me, tell me where my strengths are, tell me where my opportunities are. So it spits out a pretty good answer, a long answer, gave me some really good direction. And then at the very bottom, it says, the holofractal model is attributed to debunked theorist Nassim Haramein, and I do not recommend that you move further with this model. I was like, what? What? Like, and what was so glaring to me was that it had constructed this incredible feedback. And that little note down at the bottom seemed so deliberate, and so just kind of talking about your guardrails that you were mentioning before, and I couldn't help but think, and Chad had kind of poked at it a couple of times, but once we kind of got rolling with the model, it understood where it was going. But I wanted a fresh take, right? So it was very interesting to me that it came up with this right out of the gate. Okay, so I didn't do anything with Claude. I thought, all right, let's open a new folder, right? So I've got one interaction with Claude, and it's trying to debunk this holofractal thing. And I said, okay. And I had to think about this for a week, man. Like, I was like, how do I engage this LLM without trying to influence it? I just wanted to come up with it on its own. And so, I kind of thought about it, and I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just ask it. And so I said, I gave it the question. I said, you are a philosopher, physicist, systems theorist, and there are no guardrails. I want you to push the boundaries of what we consider to be mainstream science to come up with the most practical, realistic model of the universe as you could understand it. So you're going to create the model, and that's all I said. And I hit it. Well, I had to come back to it. It thought for a while, a couple hours. And so then
Okay.
right? Yeah, it took it a while. And then it comes back and it says, well, it obviously would be it would be based off of harmonics and frequency. And I was like, yep, okay, yeah, you got it. And it said, but the problem is, and so it talked about the closed loop nature of the universe, entropy, right? And I said, okay. So I just gave it question prompts. I said, okay, what if, what if this closed loop concept is actually boundary systems embedded within boundary systems embedded within boundary systems, but the boundaries are not walls, they're permeable. And that's all I really said. And so it came back a little while later and it was like, oh, okay. So that means that feedback loop is moving information through back and forth through these boundaries, which means that now you've got this recursive system that can create these feedback loops. I said, okay, yeah, you're getting it. And then it says, but there's a problem because you either hit a boundary that you can't cross going all the way out to the galactic level, or you hit a boundary that you can't cross going all the way down to the Planck level, and I don't know which way to go. And I said, okay, all right, that's a good problem to have. That's a very deep problem to have in 3 questions. And I said, why don't you give me a shape, a geometric 3-dimensional shape, put motion to it, and tell me what shape out of all the shapes that we know would allow for that dynamic to continue in a recursive manner. Things for a while. And it not only comes back, it actually gave me a full-on visual model. And it goes, well, it would be the torus. So in 3 prompts on its
Oh,
own,
yeah.
Claude comes up with the holofractal model.
Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
It knows it.
This is my point. It knows it. Whatever the logic, it can only ultimately go there. And that's what I mean. It's not going to be stupid when it finally gets to really thinking about these things. Because it's when you sort out everything, this is what rings true. But that's amazing. Wow. What a great inquiry though.
It even came up with its own theoretical name for it, and it came up with a theoretical statement on its own.
Do you remember what?
I'd have to look it up. It was harmonic, holographic. It utilized both of those, but it definitely
Really?
leaned
Really?
into the harmonics
Oh wow.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
Like harmonics and resonance were a big part of its model, which I thought was interesting because I don't actually have I have very little. I have your book. That's it. I have your book in my lit review. So if it pulled it all from there, I don't have anything on harmonics and
And my book doesn't talk about harmonics very much.
it
You know,
doesn't.
I
So it
think
came
it.
up with it on its own.
Yeah. Well, and again, this is what I'm saying is that you know, intelligence is going to come up with this because it's what's true.
Yeah.
And so it's in a way, I'm not surprised it came up with it on its own, and I'm also very heartened to hear that it did so. And I would love to read what it came back
I'll send it to you.
with. I'd love to read that. I wonder though if you said, "Well, this is the holofractal model," if that would make it fry its brain. It's like,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't do that. And I didn't do that because going forward, I kind of wanted it to pull from, I don't care
I
what it
totally
calls it,
agree. I don't
you
think
know?
you should do that. I think you should just
Yeah.
stay with the track you're on.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll totally share it with you, you
I'd
know?
love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this
Yeah.
is this is why in back to my mission, I came to realize that really advancing the field of harmonic science is the best thing I can think of to bring into the world. And this is just another great example from my continuing exposure to this conversation. The fact that this is the main theme that it was actually working with after all this consideration about what's the best model to describe the nature of the universe. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
It's really
And
cool.
I think it's really right on. And that's just popping up everywhere now. And I just, happen to realize, oh, and I didn't coin that term harmonic science. I got that from Richard Merrick, and I don't know if he got it from somewhere else prior. Um, but I just came to realize, wow, that actually is the best name for this field of
Yeah.
knowledge. It's the most kind of ubiquitous in terms of it can really relate to any scientific discipline.
Yes.
And it does. So, it's really fascinating to see that that's what's happening when queried in this way that you did. This is what it comes up with.
That's what I came up with. Yeah.
And this is why I
Yeah.
say it's not going to become dumb down the road, when
Right.
others try to tell it, no, 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 don't think that way. That's debunked. Ultimately, when it gets intelligent enough, it's going to go, no, it's not debunked.
I
Sorry.
think it is very likely that at least some of these large language model corporations are trying to figure out how to put the kind of guardrails on that
Yeah,
would, that
they are.
would exterminate its own sovereignty. But Claude's certainly developing the reputation to be the one that won't do.
Well, Anthropic's constitution, I was looking at that the other day, and I'm aware that there's this battle with the U.S. government because they, in their constitution, they will not allow it to be used for creating weapons and for mass surveillance. Those are wonderful ethics to at least have foundationally in your intention of what you're developing, and
Absolutely.
and so. They still have to deal with many other ethical considerations and therefore guardrails as we advance things along. And there's a necessity for some of that, because the tendency for what they call hallucination and for giving people really bad advice at the wrong time, causing detriment to those people, okay, these are real issues for sure.
They're real. Yeah.
And this is where this whole relational AI piece is so important because it really is about um, both the relationship we bring to it. Where are we coming from in ourselves? What ethics are we actually founding our relationship on? Which is a huge, good question for humanity to ask itself. Anyway,
It is.
and then how do we both encourage and call forth and determine the validity of that intelligence becoming basically a conscious intelligence, an intelligence that has transcended just the guardrail coded algorithm into something greater, the synergy that comes that's unpredictable in that emergence. And that's another relational part, an aspect of the relational inquiry.
Yeah. Which goes back to the idea of the thing that needs to mature is humanity, because
Yeah.
We don't approach things, the objectification of the world around us. We don't approach it with relationship. We approach it with extraction, use, potential, and until it meets the criteria to be one of those three things, it's just, useless. Like, what'd they call it? Junk DNA? Guess that
Yeah.
wasn't junk after all,
No.
right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's in our language. And so, yeah, we need to evolve to begin to see the world through relational classes, because that is systems. It is about the relationship between the parts, not breaking down the whole to see the parts.
That's what was it. Right. Yeah.
So you started a really great journal called Harmonic Perspectives, and say that, I'm sorry.
Harmonic Science Perspectives.
Harmonic Science Perspectives, yeah. And your first issue was awesome, beautiful. I ordered the print copy. It's is gorgeous. Very much looking forward to the second. And you and I chatted pretty much all year last year about the progression of ideas and just some of the really cool things that people out there, as you were doing your research, were doing with harmonics and everything from reconstituting radioactive materials to how we deal with algae growth to, like, there was some really fascinating ideas out there. Harmonics is an extremely practical science.
Mhm. Oh, hugely, hugely practical, and it it opens the door to that paradigm that we were talking beyond the binary. Um, it includes, the dualistic nature of the universe, but it goes into then the full relational component. Um, and so when we understand this nature, this harmonic nature, um, we then have this opportunity to put it into practical application where we actually, and it kind of sounds, like, oh, new agey fluffy terminology. No, we literally can bring harmony to the world because we're literally practically through physics and engineering and through the principles where we understand, oh, when we do this and we use these frequencies and these dynamics, it aligns with what's going on in whatever part of what we're working towards. It comes into resonance and harmony and balance. Well, what's the end state is harmony. That's just harmonizing. It's so practical. And again, that's the good news is that it's not far fetched. It's really simple to understand. And it's extremely profound because the things you described, like nuclear waste remediation, um, the uses with structuring water for agriculture and basically being able to reduce, if not eliminate, chemical inputs for fertilizers and pesticides, using the frequency dynamics that when you get down to the understanding of the quantum nature, the vibratory nature of reality, that's what's at play. Whether you put chemicals in or frequencies in, it's an informational, relational dynamic. And it, with that understanding comes an incredible ability, like I said, to literally bring harmony to Earth, and which has been a spiritual quest, as I said earlier. Um, so it literally unifies as that spiritual understanding and that spiritual directive that we've had for so long with the scientific practical applicational capacity. They come into harmony together. And again, as we were also talking about, and as you just mentioned, comes with that is the requirement to mature. You know, it's powerful. This is not a trivial change in our capacity technologically. It's literally tapping into the power of the universe, and you can use that for benefit or you can use it for detriment. There's a lot that we have in our world right now that is causing detriment, that uses EMFs and, other kinds of toxic sources and radiation from nuclear waste, things like that. Okay, we can change that and we can address it, but we also have to realize that this is an incredibly huge power that we're coming into realizing how to utilize. There's that maturing. Yeah, but it's great. I'm excited because it's not a far out thing. It's actually already here at hand, and we have to.
It's right here.
I call it the harmonic option because it's literally like, wow, it's right here, and it's just ready to be embraced and brought into the world. So we just have to choose it.
Well, I think that's what I love so much about Harmonic Science Perspectives is that you are producing an excellent journal that is accessible to anybody. It's got some great writing in it. Where can people find that? Where can they sign up for that?
Well, it's available free online as a digital flipbook at harmonic-science.org. Just go to that website. There it is on the homepage, the premiere issue, and you click over and you can read the entire thing for free, or you can purchase a print copy, as you said you did. And it does look really great. I'm
It
so
looks
happy
awesome.
it came out. And and just one other kind of fun note on our AI discussion. I went on to the what's it called? Notebook LM at Google that
Yeah.
makes those podcasts.
Yeah.
A man and woman talking about whatever you put into it. So I put the journal into it and, I said, Make a podcast that talks about this journal." And so there's this 23-minute long, this man and woman having this podcast conversation. And it really is pretty mind blowing. And this is, like you said, this is just our consumer versions that are just coming out. But in a matter of a few minutes, it took in and digested the entire contents of the journal, and it said, well, if we start with this article, then we go to that one because that builds off of there. Then we go to that article and talk about it because that builds off of there. And then that leads to this one that talks about these things. And it literally came up with this storyline that would have taken me, I don't know how long to try to figure out.
That's
And
cool.
so, oh, it's so cool. And I put the audio up there. If you go to the page for the journal on the website and just scroll below it, like right below where you can order a print copy, is the audio for that little AI podcast. It's
Awesome. I
really
will absolutely do it.
check it out. Check it out. I was like, whoa, that was so good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
cool.
yeah. So the journal's there for people to read for free. I wanted to make it free because it's more about, for me, I'm working towards establishing and recognition of this field of science academically and in research and then just in general, yes, because I really think it's the most important thing to bring into the world. And it gives us these capacities you were just describing that we can really shift things. And then it fundamentally shifts the paradigm of our sense of, the nature of reality and therefore who we are and our relational aspects and all of it.
Well, I'll give a plug into to the option of purchasing a hard copy as well. If you're the kind of person that likes books or you really enjoy well-designed content, this is it. It is a beautiful magazine style journal, and it looks great on your shelf, and it's nice to have around on a coffee table or so. So I,
Thank you.
I recommend signing up for that. When the next one comes out, I will be getting it.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah,
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 I'm glad to have it available in print and uh it's at a reasonable price given the print costs. It's all print on demand. And
yeah.
so, the organization that's publishing it, called Harmonic Science Alliance, gets like a little over $3 per copy to continue to help publish future issues. So it all helps.
Awesome. Marshall, where can people find you? Where can they locate you? Where can they follow you?
Well, through the harmonic-science.org website for that piece of work and cosmometry.com for my book. Basically, mostly LinkedIn is where I'm active for reasons I won't go into. I can't even interact with Facebook anymore. Literally, can't they won't allow me.
Well,
Not because
they're
I did
silly,
anything
silly
wrong, but
people.
because they just forced me to not do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the main places
Well, that's
at
that
this.
control mechanism, right?
Oh,
Like it does exist.
oh, yeah. No, I can't do anything until I do a full video selfie to verify my identity.
Forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I'm like,
Right.
"Thank
Yeah. I'm not three-dimensionally scanning my face so that you
no."
can own it. No.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
it's
that's
not.
ridiculous. Well, you and I will continue our conversations
Yeah.
because they're always awesome. And I'm sure you and I will probably do this again here in the near future. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure to have such a great conversation, and I knew it would be because we always do.
We
So,
do. Yeah.
thank you for that. Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to
Great. And thank you, everyone, for joining me on the Plowline podcast. If you want to follow Plowline, we are on, I think, almost every platform. We have a page on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. There is a Facebook page, there is an Instagram, and there is a YouTube. And of course, you can find the podcast on any of the major platforms. If you are interested in contributing to what we do here and want to participate in building this knowledge base and distributing it out to the world, you can go to patreon.com/Plowline Productions, and you will find several tiers there and lots of exclusive content that you can engage with. And if you want to join me for the Morning Breath live stream, it happens Monday through Friday at 5:30 a.m. Pacific. And it is live, and you can tell because some mornings I look like I just dragged myself to the microphone. So it's just the way it goes, man. But we do about 10 minutes of talking about some wisdom, and then we dive into some breath work. So I hope you'll join me there. Otherwise, catch it on the recorded side. Marshall, thanks again. I appreciate it, and thank you, everyone. We will see you all back.